I've taken questions that I post ChatGPT for cardinality in real analysis, and I've asked Bing similar. Well, I tried to ask the same questions, but not exactly the exact same flow that I did for cardinality. And so in this video, I'm going to show what were the answers between ChatGPT from OpenAI and then whatever they licensed to Microsoft that was put into the Bing search engine. So the plan is to compare the same question that I asked ChatGPT word for word with Bing. Again, as I mentioned, it's using the ChatGPT engine conceptually, we are told, but you will see that in the answers, it looks like it's a version of the engine made for Bing, set to specific Bing requirements. It is not the ChatGPT engine completely. We're gonna get chatbots in stereo, and what I wanted to do with this work was to figure out, should I be using Bing and ChatGPT at the same time to learn more about real analysis, which is what I have been doing lately. Am I going to get more than one from the other, pick one of the two, or use both? And yeah, so let's go through the questions. So for example, here is what the GUI looks like when you ask a question. I'm going to have this question quoted in a separate slide, so I'm not going to have it for long. Just showing what the GUI looks like. Bing has a copy feature, which I really like. Then in the case of ChatGPT, it looks different. I have it in night mode, which I like a lot more since I'm an old dude. And so this is the answer for that question from ChatGPT. Again, I'm going to quote it into a slide, so I'm only showing it here from a GUI perspective, just to show this is what it looks like if you went to ChatGPT and asked this question. So this is the question again. Two infinite sets can have the same number of elements, even though one is a proper subset of the other. ChatGPT gives a fairly lengthy answer and talks about that, yeah, this is indeed correct. And this is all about cardinality. And it's all about, in the case of infinite sets, cardinality is more complex, but if you can set up a mapping between two infinite sets that is one-to-one, then you're golden. Then that is true. The answer to this question is yes. I'm not going to go into details for every single question. I don't want this video to be too long. So if you're really interested in reading the actual question, feel free to pause the video. I'm just going to skim through the answers just to show how they're different in a basic way, but keep going. And this is the Bing answer. The Bing answer is about the same length, goes into the same subject, uses different terminology, uses the concept of equinumerosity, and also mentions the term bijection, which is not mentioned in the answer from ChatGPT, but it does the same thing. It just says, hey, if you could take, I don't know, the odd integers and the natural numbers, for example, and you can map them one-to-one, you got a winner. Even though the odd integers, conceptually, is a smaller set, it's a subset of the natural numbers. The odd positive integers, I should say. So then I asked ChatGPT, what are other examples of infinite sets with the same cardinality? It gave me a few examples. And again, I'm not going to read these because I don't want to make this video too long. But yeah, it just gave me a few examples. In the case of Bing, it gave me a list, but it did not compare them. Right? So if we go back to the ChatGPT answer, it goes through, for example, says the set of positive integers and the set of negative integers. So it gives you the comparison and sets it up and does it, which I find more educational than just a list. And then you're expected to go through them. Now, of course, in the case of Bing, what I do like is that it set it up in two separate categories. So it went into countably infinite sets, which I highlighted in yellow, and uncountably infinite sets, also highlighted in yellow. So the answers in stereo for these two questions are actually very interesting. Different takes on the question, on the answer to the question. And actually, in these two cases, I would have used these at the same time, I would have said, oh, let me go see what Bing says. Oh, let me go see what ChatGPT says. Knowing incredibly enough that they're the same engine in the end, but apparently there have been enough changes made in how it has been, I don't know if the word is localized, adapted, I think is the better word, to Bing. Now, one thing that I found really interesting is that Bing gives me the sources of where it got the content. I find that great. I wish ChatGPT did that, and I'll put some of these links in the description of the video. It uses LibreText, a website that I had never heard from before. Now I know, so that's wonderful. Then let's go through a couple more questions. So then I asked it, explain Cantor's diagonalization argument. And ChatGPT gave me a fairly long answer. The whole business about recoding some integers, some digits into other digits and that are not in the set that you started with to show that the real numbers are infinite and not countable. So goes through, sets it up at length. Yeah, so more of setting up the way Cantor did his diagonalization argument. And of course, in the case of Bing, Bing also gave a pretty lengthy answer to this question. So again, using binary representations and then changing the digits diagonally. And that's why it's called the diagonalization argument. I like the way Bing made it more pictorial. And also Bing took a lot of care to explain it. So the explanation in Bing, I personally like better than the case of ChatGPT. Then what is the point of constructing empty subsets of E? And so yeah, it did a good job in assuming that what I meant by E was a set. I think I could have posed this question better, but also I'm trying to quote questions in the two bots, and the list of questions that were generated from ChatGPT were more of a flow of questions where I would ask the question based on the previous question. And I tried to get away from that when I asked Bing so that I could compare only the major questions, not the sub questions. That's just the choice that I made. And yeah, it talks about, yeah, the reason why you use empty sets for proofs. The empty product, the empty union. Right, so it gave me an answer. ChatGPT gave me an answer. Bing. Now here is where things started to get surprising for me. This was a very short and concise answer. Still correct. Still gave me what I quote unquote needed, and wanted me to ask a further question, and that was fine, but I was expecting more of this. Okay, then I kept going. Why is an onto function sufficient to prove a set is countable? Yeah, and it goes through the answer, all about countable. And then I asked the same question of Bing, and again, and this is where I started getting surprised. Like, oh wow, those are really brief answers. They're correct, brief. Right. So yeah, and I like the does this make sense at the end, but it's still very short. Give me an example of an onto function with duplicates and how it can be used to prove countable. Gives me ChatGPT gave me an example, and then went about the whole business of how to prove countable. In the case of Chat, and it continued. This is a continuation for ChatGPT. And I should have put this. This should have been a 3 of 3. I miscounted these slides. Yeah, so it gave me an example. Went through it. Actually, I'm sorry. This is the Bing answer. I'm sorry. Yes. So this is the ChatGPT answer, which is a little longer. And then this slide should say Bing. Absolutely. I can even tell by the way it is written that it is Bing. That was my mistake. So this is the answer that Bing gave me. An example of duplicates, it uses mod 2. Very interesting, a little bit of stereo going on. That's great. Again, to the point, very succinct. Yeah, so putting a one-to-one correspondence with the natural numbers. And that was my mistake. This slide should read Bing. And then a question that I asked ChatGPT, what is set containment? And so A is a subset of B, right? Goes through it, and if a set A is not contained within another set B, we say that A is a proper subset of B. That doesn't read right. Should say if a set A is contained within another set B. Yeah, a proper subset is a subset that is not equal to the set it is contained in. That is correct. So you see how with these bots, you have to be careful. If you read very carefully, sometimes you'll find something that's a little off. So this is early days for this technology for sure. Bing, it's almost like Bing very quickly. Yeah, we can use a symbol, that symbol to denote set containment. Yeah, 1, 2 is a subset of 1, 2, 3. So when is A a proper subset of B? Sort of asking the question in a different way. Yeah, there exists at least one element in B that is not in A. That is correct. Then the Bing answer, very brief. Yeah. What is an example and a definition of an index collection of sets? And that it goes through the example and it describes it. The Bing answer, again, very succinct. Now, do notice how Bing gives references. I cut out the references, and that was my mistake. But you'll see what it says of a collection of sets, 2, right? So footnote 2. So that I like about Bing. So what is the outcome? The outcome is Bing tells you where it got the answer. That's a really good feature for students especially. You can copy the answer more easily from Bing. ChatGPT allows you to send a correction, and the downvote is actually a correction. I did not try Bing to find out whether that was the case again, so I'm missing that to do a correct comparison. Now, I have been trying this question, which is not in analysis. It's in number theory. How many primitive roots does 47 have? Knowing that the answer is 22, is the totient of the totient of 47, and not 46, which is what ChatGPT was giving me until recently. I wrote these slides, I don't know, almost a week ago, and so I entered into Bing the question, and sure enough, Bing gave me the correct answer. Very nice. But ChatGPT no longer gives 46 as the answer, which it has been doing up to now. So it's really interesting that they're continuing to work on the answer. And the licensed ChatGPT and Bing gives you the correct answer, whereas the ChatGPT answer still fumbles. This one got closer. Instead of saying that, instead of giving you the answer as 46, it did correctly say it's the phi of 46. All right. But in here, it messed something up. If you go down to the very last 2 lines of this entry, it says phi of 46 is phi of 2 times 23. And it messed up in doing phi of 2. Phi of 2, actually it did it correctly. It's 1. So it got that far. Phi of 23 is 22, and that is correct too. But then it did 22 times 2 instead of 22 times 1. So it's like swim so far to drown at the shore. It got pretty far. So what this tells us is that these bots will continue to improve. Interestingly enough, as ChatGPT has been licensed to Bing, what you get out of Bing is different from ChatGPT in some examples. Also, you still get answers that are a little off somewhere, and so you have to be very careful with what you get out of these bots. Yet, as a new technology, I still find it amazing. All right. So, in general, and I put a question mark in my conclusion because I believe we haven't gone to the point where we can make a conclusion. Nowhere near that. The answers for ChatGPT in general went a little further than Bing. I will continue to just use ChatGPT for learning real analysis. That's because I only have so much time. But actually, if I have more time on my hands, I would go back and do some more Bing as well. So Bing actually did pretty well, and I really like the stereo. The battle of the bots has just begun. Yeah, but really, and I put it in yellow, the battle of the bots has not yet begun because Google has not entered the fray. All right. And they have announced that they're going to call it Bard, which I personally think is a terrible name. I hope they change that name, but if it's Bard, it's what they decided to call it. And sure enough, once Bard is out, I will be doing one of these comparisons. But for now, this is the only comparison that I will make between Bing and ChatGPT. Maybe I'll do one later in 2023, I'm not sure. But for now, this is it.